Hi, my name is John Hosler, product manager of some of Garmin's wearable product lines, and I'm with Matt Davis, one of Garmin's business development managers who mainly focuses on strategic partnerships. Together, we're going to discuss some insights on Garmin's wide range of supported activities. And first, Matt will walk through how COVID has impacted how our customers are using our watches, and then I'll discuss Garmin's approach on expanding into new markets and how we design some of the new features. And while we obviously wish we could be discussing this face-to-face like past years, we'll be live to answer questions at the end of our session.
Thanks, John. Before we move into niche markets, we want to give you an update on our users' stats during the pandemic. A key theme that has come out during this difficult time is stronger than ever. This phrase refers to Garmin, to our partners, and to our customers. Garmin is unique in its position to capture how people are shifting their activities and workout habits in the world of COVID-19. This has provided a great deal of insights that we get frequent questions on. So we wanted to start with this update and show you how Garmin users are indeed staying stronger than ever during the pandemic, and then tie that into our approach to niche markets. We believe data like this is important to our partners, which is why we're sharing it with you today. With the flexibility of the Garmin Connect developer programs, we expect to see our developer community take advantage of the additional data available and quickly adapt to user activity trends. Whether it be seasonal changes or, in this case, a global pandemic, we're always here to support our partners. The first activity type we'll discuss is golf. You can see heading into spring, as the pandemic was in full force and lockdowns began to be enforced across the country and across the world, the golf activity took a sharp dive. At one point, at least in America, over 50% of golf courses were closed or restricted in some capacity. Naturally, it was harder to get out on the golf course, but as springtime came, or summer came, and the weather warmed up a bit and lockdown started to ease, we saw more and more of our users get on the golf course again. Golf also tends to be a good natural social distancing activity. And if you play like me, it's not a bad thing to be socially distanced while you play. And we saw those levels climb up even above the 2019 levels. On average, we've seen about 37% more golfing activity in 2020 than in 2019. Hiking also has been a natural choice and very popular activity during the pandemic. With the number of indoor activities so restricted, our users took to the great outdoors and were logging lots of hikes. This year, we saw a nearly 40% increase in the level of hiking activities compared to 1 year ago. And while our users weren't hiking, it looks like they were doing a lot of running. Running activities saw their biggest boost during the heart of lockdowns from March to July. It appears that at the end of lockdowns, some users who were doing other activities before starting running were able to return to their other activities and maybe give running a break, which is what accounts for that dip coming into the summer. Still, overall, we've seen an average of 15% increase in running activities for 2020. With all the increased time and hours at home, our users seem to be able to get out and go on more walks. We've seen a huge increase in our walking activity of 52% this year. Beyond just getting out and walking more often, the average user is also walking further, about 15% further on an average walk than they were a year ago. And the stress of a global pandemic seems to have more of our users looking for creative ways and new ways to decompress. The biggest change by far that we've seen across all of our activities is the yoga category. We saw a 104% increase since last year in these activities logged. This took off at the start of lockdowns with the ease of doing virtual yoga classes right from your own home. Garmin has also helped encourage these types of activities with our on-device animated yoga workouts on watches such as Vivo Active 4, the Venue, and others. And while pretty much across the board, all of our activities have seen an uptick this year, there are a few that unfortunately have not recovered quite as well. One that's very understandable is swimming. As just about every pool closed during lockdown, whether indoors or outdoors, it was nearly impossible to get in a swim, at least if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere. As the summer months approached, some pools started to open up again, and outdoor bodies of water warmed up enough to allow for open water swimming. This helped close the gap that we saw between 2019 and 2020, but we're still in the process of working our way back to those pre-pandemic levels. The activities we've just discussed all fall into the most popular tier of activity types. And you can see that coming through the pandemic, Garmin, our partners, and our users are indeed strong. But this is only part of the story. Just as Garmin and our developer partners have adapted to this changing environment, together we also break new ground in making our products relevant and indispensable to more and more niche activity types. Just another example of how we stay stronger than ever. Many of our users log multiple types of activities. By and large, they're not single sport athletes who just log one type of activity. Rather, they may have a focus on a single sport, but like to log other hobbies or cross-training activities. And while our list of activity types and activities supported by Connect IQ apps continues to grow, there are still many activities which are unaddressed. Because of this, we've noticed an interesting phenomenon over the years. Garmin users want to record these unsupported types of activities so much, and they're so creative, that they've used a lot of different workarounds. One example is the sport of surfing, which John will focus on here in a moment. We know we had many Garmin users who were avid surfers, but until recently, this type of activity wasn't available. A common workaround was for a surfer to get out in the water and record a session as an open water swim instead. I myself am a water skier, which I believe there still aren't really many options available for from Garmin today. I also have used the open water swim activity for many of my slalom runs. So in that case, I end up with an open water swim with an average pace of about 30 miles an hour, which definitely turns a few heads. But again, I've wanted to at least record something while I'm out in the water, so I make do with a workaround that obviously is not optimal. And this brings us to Garmin's focus on niche markets. We want to continue to be a company who really fuels all of the passions of our users and not just a select few.
As the product manager of Fenix, I hope you're all familiar with the Fenix line, but I wanted to give a bit of context and history about the Fenix line. So prior to Fenix, GPS watches were quite specialized and largely focused on specific, often very singular use cases. Garmin made dedicated running watches, they expanded into dedicated golf watches and tactical adventure watches, but Fenix was the first to kind of bring all of this together into a singular, rugged, go anywhere, do anything watch. We brought in Garmin's top-end training features and navigation features from several of our markets and made one watch that had some hardware innovations to help us make it ruggedly attractive and a watch that you truly never wanted to take off. So it's been a fascinating journey over the past several years, but my favorite part has been seeing all the incredible things people are doing. We want to continue to strengthen this by strategically identifying new customer needs that we can provide solutions for. I know Matt's already said niche, but for today's discussion, I'll refer to these new customer groups as niche markets. And before diving in, I have to admit that I've talked to several people throughout Garmin about niche or niche markets, and no one really knows the proper way to pronounce it. So even after researching this online, and we still aren't sure, so give us some grace if we get jumbled up a few times. However, since Garmin loves misspelling some of our names and using weird accents at times, I'm going to stick with niche for today. So I want to go a bit more broad than Fenix and show Garmin's mission and vision statements. There are a few key parts that I want to speak to. First, when we design new features, our intent is to help people get the most out of the time that they spend doing their passions. This is really important because it can be interpreted in many different ways. This can mean helping them in the moment to make decisions or have increased awareness so that they can perform better. But it can also mean to not distract someone in the moment and by simply tracking their critical metrics about an activity so that they can relive that experience afterwards and learn from it. How we approach this can drastically change the end feature. Second, we want to be the global leader in every market we serve. When we come after a new market, watch out. We dive deep, sometimes literally, and are not simply checking boxes with new features. We learn everything we can about it in activity. We test it thoroughly. We work hand in hand or wrist to wrist with industry experts and passionate employees to make the best feature possible. One recent example of this is surf. Surfers place a huge demand on their bodies, and they need a watch that they can depend on. And as Matt said, over the years, we've noticed an increased number of people using Fenix watches for surfing activities, even though we didn't have any dedicated feature for them. They were each uniquely configuring their watch with data fields and unique Connect IQ apps, but using Fenix because they knew that they could trust it. The important thing about surfing and most of the activities we go after is that to these users, it's not a niche part of their life. It's often their passion and sometimes their lifestyle. And for those of us who don't live near the oceans, this might be a niche activity, but it's important to remember that this one feature could be the sole reason someone's buying our watch. So we better do a good job in serving them and designing it right. Surfing happens to be one of the sports that we determined is less about helping a surfer in the moment, not super easy to look down at a watch while you're surfing a barrel of a wave, and more about helping them relive their experience and learn from it afterwards. We kept the watch experience pretty simple, but the experience really comes alive when you view your activity on Garmin Connect. You can review each wave, where you went, how far, how fast, and even compare it with biometric data and share it with others. It's here where surfers can relive their experience and learn from them. One of the things that was quickly obvious when talking to industry experts and passionate Garmin surfers is that it's a really tight community and everyone is extremely passionate. This makes it a really fun group. But we knew that this community aspect was something we wanted to incorporate into our experience, and Matt will talk a little bit more about this.
A key part of our strategy in entering these new niche markets is to develop relationships with partners who are experts in these fields. One such partner in surfing is a company called Surfline. These are guys who eat, sleep, and breathe surfing. They established themselves decades ago as the premier surf conditions and forecast provider for different surf spots worldwide. From there, they grew into the most well-known surf app on the market, providing things such as surf metrics and video footage of your surf sessions. Sessions is actually the name of this feature. It allows users to relive their best and perhaps their worst waves ridden that day. They offer this by currently maintaining cameras at over 600 beaches and counting. Surfing has traditionally been known as a pure sport with little need for technology. Together, Garmin and Surfline are breaking the mold with a very relevant technology for surfers, but one that doesn't detract from the sport's greatest aspects. With the Garmin integration, user surf activities will sync with the Surfline mobile app to give your location and surf metrics. This then gives you instant access to video footage of your waves ridden. This is a great example of a developer taking their product, which was already first in class, and making it even more valuable through an integration with Garmin and gaining access to Garmin's vast user base. It also gave Surfline's users the ability to use a piece of technology that's truly built for the rigors of their sport. Some other opportunities for Surfline, which I'll say here are certainly not always the case for every one of our developers, but in some cases our partners' specialties strategically align so well with Garmin initiatives that in the case of Surfline, they were able to help with beta testing for our surf activity, as well as our new surf devices. And we were able to feature them in the marketing launch of some of our new surf-focused watches. While this is all great, the story definitely does not end there. What many of our developer partners find is that the first integration or the first app created is really only the beginning of the story. As Garmin continues to innovate, we look for developers who want to innovate alongside us. Leveraging one another's strengths, developers and Garmin find creative and valuable ways to scale these partnerships, especially when breaking ground in new niche markets. Using the Surfline example again, since completing the initial API integration and sessions integration, they've gone on to begin creating a CIQ app that will display surf conditions at users nearby or favorite beaches directly on their Garmin device. We've also looked for ways to expand surfing to additional devices in the Garmin family. Finally, the work done on surfing has even helped pave the way for other similar activity types.
I won't go into these in as much detail as I did surfing, but these are a few of the other new markets and features that we brought in with the latest Phoenix 6 update a few months ago. Each of these new sports gives us the opportunity to utilize new technology to help enrich the experience of Garmin athletes and help them get the most out of their time. With indoor climbing, we automatically detect each of your climbs and track elevation gained. With bouldering, we allow customers to quickly input the difficulty of their route and track their success and fall rates. With mountain biking, we integrated the popular grit and flow metrics into the watch, helping you understand how smoothly and efficiently you navigate the trails. Going a step further, some of our niche markets require further differentiation, and we often introduce dedicated product lines with hardware specifically designed for their needs. Golf and diving are a great example of this. One thing that always surprises people is just how many other activities and features we have on our watches. You can clearly see that we don't have any plans to slow down.
John made an important point earlier that to many of our users, these markets that we refer to as niche are not really niche at all. They're a lifestyle, a purpose, and a passion. We just heard from a customer a few weeks ago who made the comment that the new Surfline integration was the single best feature now available to him on Garmin. And that's the reason we continue to innovate and break ground in these new markets. As we close today, we want to thank you for the integral role you play as Garmin expands into these niche segments. We truly value your expertise and your commitment to your fields. We want to encourage you to keep being creative and bringing these passions to the forefront with the help of a partner like Garmin, who can give you added scale and exposure. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're always here to support our partners. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we need to keep innovating, adapting, and really be ready for anything that comes our way. We at Garmin see no better way to do this than working with you, our developer partners, to make our products even more relevant to all of our users' passions. Thank you.